Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Northeast Alabama Community College Softball Show with Coach Joe Guthrie. I'm the Howard Chaney, along with Phil Harris and the ACC Tournament champ, Coach Joe Guthrie. Congratulations, Coach, on the tournament championship.
Thanks for having me as well.
We appreciate you letting us follow in this journey. Coach, tell us a little bit about the tournament. Did it go like you planned and everything?
Yeah, I mean, we were hoping to get, obviously, ideally, if you can play one game every day for 3 days, and stay in the winners bracket, that gives you the best chance of success. We were fortunate to be able to do that. I thought we played, pretty good, did a pretty good job overall. Particularly with the ability to stay in the fight and stay resilient with some adversity. We had a little bit in the second game. And then we had a lot, in the third game. We had some close calls. A couple of them didn't go our way. That we gave up a hit late, with a runner at second base and bang, bang play went against us. And, Wallace did a good job of staying in the fight. And then, we gave ourselves a chance to, score with with Bree Wilson coming up, doing a really good job of, had a hit up the middle and then good read on a tag. And we go to second and, it just didn't convert. And then, fortunately, Marty had the triple, to lead off the inning. And then, everybody knows what Fran did, late. So, and I don't know that I said this when the game ended. I'm not sure that I've had a tournament of that magnitude where, we played error-free, on defense, which certainly helps because, Wallace made some really, really good plays against us, took away some hits. And we did the same on our end. So, when you're in a game like that, you've got to kind of match, fire with fire. And they're a really good team. They've been nationally ranked all year, and they certainly showed that the other day. And proud of our kids, for what we were able to accomplish and earn.
There's a target on your back all season long because y'all were head and shoulders above everybody. You won't admit that, but everybody that sees the box scores and all that, you were a little bit better than everybody else. And after winning that tournament, did it seem like a little bit of sigh of relief that, hey, the mission's not done, but the major step is kind of out of the way?
Yeah, I think you're just grateful to to have everything, to accomplish that goal. That was a big goal for us. We kind of had 3 at the beginning of the year. One, we wanted to win the regular season because the way that tournament's set up, you're definitely in a better position, if you're seeded 1 or 2, and then obviously, we wanted to win the tournament because that, even though we'd had a pretty good resume, up until that point, there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees, you're going to get in unless you win it. So, pretty excited about how all that went. But obviously we've still got a major goal in front of us and a good week of preparation coming up here that'll bleed right over into the following week at the World Series.
You kind of lead me into the next question, and Phil, you can take over after this. What is going to be the preparation having a little bit more time off than normal?
Well, we decided, kind of ahead of time that, if we didn't play obviously on Sunday, which we didn't, Sunday would be off. Today would be off with our team. I think we've got a marathon we're about to go into. We're going to have a defensive fundamental day, tomorrow, and then Wednesday, an offensive fundamental day, kind of a day to get back to the basics. I believe in that, before you go into a big tournament. And then, we've got some extra preparation. We'll have, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, most likely all at our place. There's a possibility Saturday we may practice somewhere else. And Sunday, we've got a practice time here. Tomorrow, we're still waiting to see, what the seeding looks like. Ideally, we're a top 4 seed, which I think we should be. Doesn't really matter that much whether you're 1, 2, 3, or 4. But if we are in the, in the top 4 seeds, then we have a bye the first day. So there'll be some more work, that goes into that day. We obviously want to get out and about. I want our kids to see the ballpark, kind of take in the sounds, do some scouting of their own. There's some things that we're going to implement that we've done in the past at national tournaments to kind of get their minds into soaking up, not only the atmosphere outside a little bit, but the atmosphere inside. So we're going to utilize that time, and then, you know, and then obviously, you know, if it shakes out the way that I think it will, then, you know, we'll be playing that Tuesday. You know, the 5, 6, 7, 8 seeds also get a bye, but it's not the first day; it's the second day. So if we were to slip for whatever reason, who knows? You know, that's what we look. I can't imagine us going much lower than that, just given our body of work. But you never know. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, I've spent a lot of the last 2 days since we played, you know, on the phone doing some committee stuff myself. I've got another call in the morning. So I'm ready to kind of get that over with and just, you know, prepare and play ball for sure.
All right, well, Coach, it's been it's been a long year, it's been a long season, and I know y'all tried to during the open week, you kind of sort of wanted to give the girls a little time off, time to get away from softball for a little while. Well, you got through this weekend. All this that goes on around with you and Courtney and Jimmy, it's a lot of stress involved for you guys. Y'all are recruiting, y'all are traveling, you're scouting, you're trying to coach a team, you're trying to get them through the tournament. Is right now this week a little bit of a good break for y'all mentally in the coaching staff? I mean, the girls are geared and ready to go, but sometimes the coaching staff can get overwhelmed.
Yeah, I just try to. This job has changed no matter what level you're in the last 5 years. I mean, it's always been. It's not a job. It's kind of a way of life. It's always been that way. Due to a lot of the extra demands that we haven't had to deal with, dealing with transfer portal kids, dealing with the recruiting calendar changes, dealing with more tournaments now that are year round, in the travel ball world in the fall. Used to you may have 3 or 4 weeks. Now you've got, it really never ends. You have to just kind of put it down. So that's a discipline unto itself. Right now, we made sure that we were, as a team, they wanted to all ride back on the bus together. They wanted to celebrate that milestone together, which I think is good. For us, we had a little bit of family time yesterday, but like I said, I've got some other duties, on certain committees. The recruiting really never stopped. So I knew I was preparing myself for this going in, that there's not really, going to be a break until it ends. And hopefully that's with us winning it. But, it's a crazy calendar because, the Alabama high school state tournament is also, somewhat linked to our tournament, given the fact that, it's at the same site, and it got pushed back to, this week, and, we're pushed back a week. Chacalaco is definitely, swallowing the elephant kind of in terms of scheduling. So, that's a little bit of a different challenge, but, you've got to, in this job, you just kind of have to stay when there's, like for me, when there's a lot of tasks in front of you, you just kind of have to eat a bite of the sandwich at a time and kind of go from there. But, it's a busy calendar now. I mean, it takes a little bit of discipline. You got to kind of really pre-plan your, your time that you're going to have off and not, and just kind of stay with the task in front of you. And it's more challenging than it used to be, for sure.
Well, Coach, going back to the tournament, you knew going in, Wallace, traditionally, they've been the measuring stick in the league. There's no doubt about it. They're geared up for this time of year. They play for this time of year. Earlier in the season, you pretty much dominated them, but you knew they were going to get better. And really going into this tournament, they were playing their best softball. And they showed it in the games Saturday and Sunday also. And I think sometimes that is an advantage for a team like them in that they're geared for this time of year. Your team is new at this, and they're also the ones being gunned at. So, therefore, do you think sometimes you can play a little bit tight, and that kind of affects a lot of things in ball games?
Yeah, I thought we handled it. We were playing against the game. I think we didn't really. There wasn't a single player on our team that had ever played in that tournament ever. And, we've got some veteran players with some Division I, experience on our roster, but even they haven't played in that. So that obviously didn't affect us. I thought we were focused. I thought we came out pretty well. I thought each day of practice got a little bit better in the week going into it. I wasn't really focused on Wallace per se. As I knew that I think every team in the league we had swept except for Shelton. So you're looking at everybody's going to come after you. I think and they all had a lot to play for sure. Wallace maybe a little more than most, but none of that was a surprise. They played really good softball, not just this weekend, but the entire last month. And they're a really good team. I mean, that's a team that finished third in the country last year. And from what I remember of the roster, basically 8 of their 9 starters are still on that team. Their 2 best pitchers are still on that team. Their player of the year bat, behind the plate is still on that team. So, it's a really good team that got really close to winning the national title last year. And, they certainly wanted to make a case for themselves to get into, the national tournament. I think they're very deserving of that. We'll find out tomorrow, where that will go. I don't know, but I've certainly made that case publicly and then privately in the meetings that I think what you saw were 2 World Series teams, and great preparation for us for what we're going to see this week, because there are going to be a lot of teams, of Wallace's caliber and maybe even a little better, that we're going to see. And so, that was one of the first things that was going through my mind, believe it or not, when I was walking off the field, is you couldn't ask for a better setup going into what we're going to go into, because, it wasn't like they gave it to us. It wasn't like we gave it to them. If there were things that I needed, that I look at that we needed to improve on, it would be lead off at bats. We squandered some of those, made a lot of 1-pitch outs at times with lead off at bats. There were times the ball was in the air too often, especially with 2 outs. That's got to get better. But overall, there weren't too many things on the gimme sheet that, we would look back on and go, it was just glaringly bad. So that's a testament to how both teams have played. But obviously, the team that I'm in charge of, I'm pleased with that. And we've got to continue to prepare, for this one. It's really a similar tournament, and then add 2 days. That's basically what you're looking at. So, with the same kind of intensity and focus and discipline, I think we can earn a similar outcome. If we don't, we won't. So, I think our players, we have good players for a reason, and good players show up in moments. You saw a lot of that this week. There were multiple players that showed up in moments, and I don't consider that coaching as much as I do the players, being disciplined and focused and having that ability taken care of so they can execute in high situations. So, I think that I'm proud of them for that. And, we've got to continue to, take that kind of mindset into where we're going this week.
Well, of course, I made the statement that, I think this team has great moxie, and I think they earn their stripes mentally in this series, because you don't win these 2 games against Wallace unless you are mentally sound and mentally prepared, because there's it's a big stressful situation, not only on your batters, it's on the defense and the pitching staff also.
Yeah, and I think that's where, the preparation piece, our practices are difficult. You could see that even when you saw the other teams taking the field. What we do is challenging. I don't say a whole lot during games. I try to be, in a mindset to manage the team, unless there's some kind of violation of attitude and effort, which with this bunch, that's been pretty minimal. But in practice, it is intense and it is hard. So, that allows from my standpoint, philosophically, I believe that, you achieve, confidence through competence. And that, that takes performing under pressure, high speed practices, a lot of variables that are going to put pressure on you. I tell them at the beginning of the year, I'm going to win practice. That's my goal every day, because if I don't do that, then the game is going to be difficult. If practice is difficult, the game becomes almost like a day off. So I think I'm pleased with that. That's a great saying and slogan and all, and we can execute great practice plans. But, the players ultimately have to buy into that and do the execution piece of that. And, I'm pleased with where we were. But again, we've got to kind of burp and taste it and get to, the next level of preparation here for the national championship.
Yeah, because and like you talk about, the girls expect that kind of hard work. If they don't get it, then they think something's wrong. So naturally, they kind of expect it. Well, going back and talking about some of the players that made big plays, I know in the game where you won 2-1, they get a home run from a player that don't hit many home runs. They get great pitching performance from old Ava Smith at Wallace. She pitched very well throughout both games, but it was big when in that game where Marty McCluskey comes up, hits a home run, and ties it at 1. But to me, after that, what was huge was when Fran got the single behind McCluskey, because anytime in the softball, the ideal thing you want to open an inning is have a runner on first base with nobody out, because there's so many variables involved. But then you get the sacrifice bunt from Emery Burke, and then you run with Pearl Bellamy. And then I think Acuff ended up making really a positive out because the runner got moved there because anything happened. But Morgan Perkins came through with a clutch hit to put the team ahead at that point, 2-1. That was huge. That inning was huge.
Yeah, I thought Perkins played really well. She had, just like all of our team, especially our freshmen, some grow up moments, especially on defense at times during the conference regular season. She was just tremendous. Defensively, Burke same way, Heineman same way, McCluskey same way. Lump played good defense. I mean, there's really not Lowe had several really good plays in the outfield. Kylie Weston did what she usually does in center, and Chloe Hatch did a good job in left field. We had a no doubles look, on one of their hitters in the middle of the lineup that we thought we'd see if we got into 3-ball counts. We got it twice. Chloe made a catch in left that was huge, and then Lowe, when she came back up again, same scenario kind of repeated itself, and we get it in right center that time. So, those are plays we have to have, and I thought we did a good job of taking care of business with all that for sure.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's forgotten. Of course, Addie Edwards, she's like 29-0, I think now, and she's been very good in the circle. But she's as good as what she is because the defense behind her has been so stellar.
Yeah, I think there's some synergy there for sure. I was real pleased with Addie. She did a couple things I had not seen this year, where we make a couple of not so good pitches early in the game, and then we have a conversation. She's very responsive to that. Is starting to think a little bit more on a higher level of how we're going to get hitters out. And I think this is not only Addie, but a lot of our players. This is going to be a good growth moment because I'm not saying anything against the teams that we played up to this point, but the ones that we're going to play going forward are going to be a little bit better, and then the intensity of the situation is going to be better, which are going to make players better. We had some of that in the fall. I was talking on an earlier show today that a big reason why we played Georgia Tech and McNeese. I think we played 4 teams in the fall that ended up in regionals, and I think at least 2 of those teams are in regional finals. So these are really good teams we're playing. We beat some of those teams. So, those things, the speed of the game, I remember telling, Courtney, we got done with the fall games. I'm like, from a selfish standpoint, I'd love to do this for another 3 months because it gets our kids, so much better. But, obviously they have a break and you gotta transition to other things. But, I think that's the kind of speed and pressure you're going to see in this tournament, which is it's a good development opportunity for our kids. And I think they'll be able to handle that, but we've got to prepare accordingly and get focused on what the game's telling us to do and when it's telling us to do it and go from there.
Yeah, and ideally, naturally as a coach, you want to win these games. You wish you could have walked in 1-8-3 and 8-3 and it'd been comfort, but it's good for these young ladies to be tested like they were against Wallace, because that's going to pay off next week when the national tournament starts, because you're going to have these type games every day, not just 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, those are the kind of games that you're going to have when you're playing a good team and there are no gimmies. if you go back and look at the Gadsden game, it looks 8-3. Like, we went out there and blasted, a bunch of balls. We did hit the ball pretty well in that game, but, they happened to make some mistakes, and we took advantage of those mistakes. But it wasn't like, we were hitting a home run every single at bat. That's how those crooked numbers started populating. And, that's why the little things like base running and defense, situational hitting really, really matter, in this situation, and what we're headed toward. So, from that standpoint, I was pretty pleased with how we responded to those items last week.
Yeah, definitely. So, and it's important in these tournaments. Naturally, if you're on the defensive side, you want to minimize an inning to where they maybe just get one. What's detrimental is those crooked numbers. And that, from your offensive standpoint, is what you're looking for.
Sure. It's, you pitching and defense are going to kind of toe the line if we're going to do what we need to do here. We are going to face some pitchers just like we did last week that are at times going to take the offense away. So then, your base running, your short game execution, those are very critical to get down and understand when they're going to happen, because it's not like you're going to have a whole lot of moments to do it. When the moment is called, you've got to respond immediately. And if you don't respond great, someone has to immediately, pick up the loss there. For what, if, we always talk about with our group all the time, if somebody's making outs in the air, we can't wait 5, 6, batters, 3 or 4 innings, because pretty soon you run out of time, the game's over. You've got to, if we're making outs in the air, we got to make them on the ground. If we're making too many weak contact outs on the ground, then we've got to elevate the ball. So the game kind of gives you the answers if you're paying attention. And it's a game, it's a game of adjustments, but the situational adjustments and being attuned to what's going on situationally are very critical. And that's why, for me, this is always the most fun time of the year, because everything is heightened. So I'm excited. I know they are too. And, this will be a lot of fun and something that they will, remember the rest of their life. But, we definitely want to be victorious at the end of it. That's the goal for sure.
Well, definitely. On Saturday, of course, you won the game 4-2 in a walk-off home run by 2-run homer by Francesca Lump. Well, the big play in the inning was, I think, the right fielder maybe misplayed a ball. Anyway, McCluskey ends up with a triple. I guess the mindset for Fran was it just to try to get a pitch up and drive the ball in the air, because basically you needed a sacrifice fly. She just happened to get on top of one.
Yeah, we talk about that, routinely. It's something we even go into pregame work with every single time in our, in our routine of, less than 2 outs. We just really want a hitter, runner in scoring position, less than 2 outs. We just want the hitter to make the outfielder turn around. If they take 2 steps back, chances are, no matter where the base runner is, particularly with runners in scoring position, obviously, they've got a chance. That throw is not going to be a lead bag throw where they got a chance of neutralizing us for the next 60 feet. So I thought Fran did a really good job of that. That there were a couple things in that inning that kind of broke our way. They went with a no doubles look, just like we did the inning before with Marty, which makes total sense. And so the downside of that is you got space in front. If you get a squibber kind of like she had, she had a kind of a jam shot that spun toward the line. I was pretty sure as soon as it spun that we were going to get 2. The second baseman took kind of a bad route, in my opinion, to that ball, and that allowed us, it got by her, which allowed us to send her to 3, which obviously is, really, really advantage, big time advantage for us. And the next piece for me was, when they had their conference, I told Jimmy, I thought we were discussing what we were going to do with the next hitter, because I thought they would probably pitch around Fran, especially as well as she swung it. They didn't. And then I remember talking to Marty that, just make sure that they catch it, because, they're, this is a situation where we're probably going to have 2 shots to score you. No sense in, having an early one like we had earlier in the tournament, at Gadsden. And, fortunately, Fran was able to get barrel on that and turn it around, and we didn't have to worry about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, of course, Fran had a great tournament. I think she was 7 for 11, a homer, 5 runs driven in. She was the offensive catalyst. So, and of course she got MVP of the tournament. you had to be proud for her.
Yeah, I thought, she did a really good job. Like I think Hatch, McCluskey were both on that. And obviously Addie did a really good job. We had a lot of people. I mean, if you think about, like I said, Bree Wilson coming off the bench and being ready to go and executing in that moment. I mean, we're going to have more of those moments. I thought, McNeese pinch hit one time with 2 outs. She made the right out. It was on the ground, the middle of the field. So they're buying into a process, that over time is going to, affect us in a positive way. And those are little things that, we've got to continue to do well. It's that's the recipe we've been following, now for 51 wins. So we just got a few more in front of us, and everybody be happy.
Yeah, of course, Addie Edwards was voted pitcher of the year in the ACCC Division One all conference. She was player of the year. You were coach of the year, so congratulations, coach. I know that's basically a team award, but it's not. It's nice to get those awards because it means you're winning softball games.
Yeah, I think I would be remiss that we're this doesn't get done all with me by any stretch of the imagination. You can just you can casually observe any practice, any meeting, any game. We're really fortunate. I mean, to have who we have. Courtney, I think, is one of the best pitching coaches in the country. She's proven that at the highest levels of college ball. Jimmy the same way as a hitting guy, and to have that kind of support, from your coaching staff at this level is really hard to do. I credit Dr. Campbell for making all that work, through the roles that we were able to kind of make work to get them all here, and then the financial assistance to make it work too. It's just a lot of creative thinking and support at the highest level has allowed all that to happen. A lot of things have to go well for you to win a championship, and some of them are above your pay grade. So we're just fortunate we have all those things working for us. It's taken a long time to get here, and I'm really grateful for the people that we have supporting us and the place that we work. It's just a fantastic place. And, a lot of special things are going on at Northeast Alabama Community College.
Yeah, definitely so. And the young ladies are being rewarded for it. They put in the work, but they're being rewarded for it. Well, the all conference players, I'm going by memory. I think it was Sullivan, Chloe Hatch, Marty McCluskey. Was it Perkins?
No, Kylie Weston.
Perkins.
And
Kylie
Perkins.
Weston.
We were kind of shorthanded on. We were only limited to 6 nominations on that one. The all region for NFCA came out. I certainly think Perkins and Burke have had that kind of year.
Yes.
You're limited on how many you could nominate. Weston. Our entire outfield. Made all region on the NJCAA side. Lump did. Edwards did. There was kind of a crazy rule on how many innings you had to pitch. Otherwise, I think Warnock and Harrelson have had, those kind of worthy years. So there's a lot of players. We've got kids that haven't, in the case of McNeese, in the case of Wilson, that haven't played, every single day, that have really good numbers. Olivia Acuff kind of falls in that and have really good numbers, those kind of numbers. So we're just fortunate to have a lot of players that, can help us. And that it's nice, when you're looking at a situation, maybe somebody's not swinging the bat or playing as well as they can that day, and we've got somebody there that can maybe pick up their slack. It creates competition. It makes players better. Our players have been extremely unselfish about those things. I truly believe they love each other. It's just, and you saw that, on the field when we played. This is a team that really plays with joy, and they play for one another. And I think they love each other. I think they love being here, and they play for each other. And that is rare, especially in today's society where, there's just, you're incentivized to be individualistic every time you pick your phone up. So I think it's a really special group, and, I'm excited to get going on this last stage of our journey here next week.
Well, Coach, I want to say this. If this might be true, you may not agree, but when you come into a program like Northeast, you've got to earn your playing time. You've got to earn your way on the field. It's hard work. They know it. You're going to put them through it, and when they come here, they know that's what's going to happen. And so, like you're talking about, practice time is tough, and all those things that go into it. Do you think being in a program like this, where it is tough, that these young ladies lean on each other more?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, anytime that you're going to create, we can't do what we've done and what we're about to do going forward without having stress and being, put in some situations where you're probably set up to fail, and having to really have to work through adversity to get past, the next lane of improvement where we need to go. So all of those things matter. And I think, when you're going, the beauty of a team, when you're going through those items together, you got really one of two choices. Either you can start to work together to pull through them, or, you can fail as an individual, and fortunately for us, our group has chosen that, culture matters. The little things matter. Working together matters. We've been fortunate that we've been able to build a culture to date that has reflected those items.
Well, Coach, a lot of these young ladies graduated. They're finished. They're fixing to move on to their next chapter. And then, of course, the ones that are freshmen have finished for the year. Is it nice that they don't have school to have to deal with now that you're in the postseason?
I'm sure they would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
For us, it's a little bit worrisome because, it's kind of what is that saying? Idle hands are the devil's workshop type
Yeah.
of deal.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, we got kids, but it's just idle time. And you could do something as innocuous as changing the channel on your couch and slip on a banana peel, and if you're in class, you just never know. So
Yeah.
it's a little worrisome to me because, and this is just me kind of being, open about what I think about. But when it's a little more structured, I worry less about that. But I thought last week we did a good job of handling that. Now, outside of, what we did yesterday being off and today off, it's going to become very structured because, we've got to practice. We've got to lift tomorrow. We're going to do a selection show. So there's a lot of items tagged in there tomorrow. And each day we'll get to be a little bit more, as we start to head down to Oxford. So, I'm not as worried about that, but, a lot of the same items we had to go through and do correctly last week, we're going to have to do again, just a little bit longer and a little bit different stage with a few added distractions, if we choose not to focus. But other than that, I think there'll be a willingness to prepare and do it right on our end for sure.
Yeah, I know what that is, Coach. I remember when I was in high school, my senior year, we were playing for state championships, and I remember Coach Kirby used to let us go home and eat, and we were supposed to relax before we came back to play for a game. And these two or three friends of mine, we'd get out in the yard and play tag football. So, being a kid's being a kid, and so we could have gotten hurt, but it's being a kid's being a kid. So that kind of thing, that kind of thing does happen. Well, Coach, I wanted to touch on this, and we're getting close to the end. Let you get out of here because I know you want to get home. Of course, you were talking about one of the top four seeds. I think y'all have made your argument for that. There's no doubt about it. The two Florida schools that are ranked 1 and 2, one of them won the conference, and they beat each other. So, one of those two is going to get one of the large bids naturally, and probably between Grayson and McLennan, one of those two is probably going to get. I know they split their season-ending series. One of those two is going to get in that large bid. So that don't leave much room for Wallace, but I think they have made their statement that they should be there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to share too much of the committee of what. Let me just put it this way. Here's my opinion. Let's put it that way. Okay. Of what I would see. There are 4 bids. You're looking at Trinity Valley, who did not end up winning their tournament, which was a little bit of a surprise to people because they've been in the top 5 or close to it all year out of Texas. Santa Fe out of Florida is just they're a really good at-large candidate. You mentioned McLennan and Grayson. Eastern Florida is another one that is in that conversation, and Wallace. So you're looking at about 6 teams to fill up 4 spots, really. Certainly, I think all those teams are deserving. We've played 2 of those 6. We've happened to beat them 9 times, but that's not like it wasn't easy. I think in that 9-game stretch of wins, versus Wallace and McLennan, at least half of them were 1 or 2 run games. So, those are really good teams. And I think, Grayson and McLennan kind of beat each other up during the year. So that it's kind of 6 and 1, half dozen the other. And, I'm a little less familiar with Florida because we haven't seen those guys as much, but they're good teams. I mean, I think that, Citrus League is probably considered the best one, the one that Florida Southwestern heads up. And certainly, Northwest Florida State is the defending national title winners from a year ago. So, there's some good teams in this. There's some good teams that kind of hide out in the Midwest that we'll get a chance to see in this tournament. Iowa Western being one that I know is going to be good. Gaston out of North Carolina is a very good team. It's coached by a friend of mine, Mike Stewart-Wald, who's an outstanding coach. Jimmy and I coached on the same staff with him, in Houston back in the Pro League in 2017 and won an MPF championship. So, he's certainly a very good coach. There's multiple Hall of Fame coaches in this tournament. So it'll be a good event. I've recruited it many times, as a Division I coach. So it'll be nice to be on the other side of it now in the arena for sure.
Of course, the NJCAA is having a watch party or a watch or cast, simulcast or whatever it is, to announce, just kind of like you would do the NCAA tournament, to announce the pairings and announce the top 4 seeds. And that's going on tomorrow night at 5:30. And I know y'all are having a watch party. I saw the example today,
yeah.
and the public's invited. Is from what I understand, is what I got from Jimmy. Sent me a message about it, inviting us to it. But that's a big deal. That's a big deal for these young ladies, and it might be a way for folks to get out and maybe get to see these young ladies a little bit. Where often, they're tied up with softball games and tied up with post-game things that they have to do. But it's a relaxed time that you can spend a little time with this team.
Yeah, it's important. All of us, and I think this helps our team. Jimmy, Courtney, and I have all been through this many times, on the NCAA side. And it's a lot of fun. And, I hope, that experience we can use to help our kids kind of get through these moments. Because all of us have done this a lot of times. It never gets old doing it. But that's definitely something we want to, pass on to them. And, kind of speak to your point. We hope a lot of people come out, and, I'd be absolutely idiotic if I didn't mention this on this show. We want people to pack Oxford. The one advantage we have, like I told you guys before I got on the air, I was just down here for the high school state tournament. I don't know if you guys have been there for that, but, it's really, really jam-packed of folks. And the reason why is obviously every team is somewhat local, to Oxford, being from the state of Alabama. I've been to this event as a recruiter in Oxford when it was, the JUCO World Series that we're about to do. And it's a little different vibe because, like when Wallace was playing here, they packed it. And, that was an advantage for them. And you may have a school from Utah and there's not very many people there. So, it can be a real advantage for us if folks come out to Oxford. We certainly want them there. We are, if we end up being the lone representative, we're representing the state of Alabama, which is a huge deal. And, in our home state with the series here, we want to put on, a very good show because it's important for the conference. It's important for the state of Alabama that we have an event of this magnitude at Chocolaco. And we want to do our best to ensure that I hope it stays here forever. And obviously I have a vested interest in that. But, we want to do it right for sure.
Yeah, well, and I think what you're saying is you want to color the town of Oxford Mustang blue.
We do.
No matter which blue you wear, You just want to show up in blue and have a lot of folks there. And I think they will. I think the interest for this softball team has grown week after week. They've become a household name. And there's a lot of pride in Northeast. I mean, students in the past, were thought of being a Mustang. It didn't mean a whole lot. It means a whole lot now. And I think that having athletics at Northeast really puts Northeast Alabama Community College not just on the map academically, but now it's beginning to be put on the map athletically.
Yeah, just kind of a test case to what you're saying, just being down here in the state tournament today. Plainview obviously played 3 games, just got done playing a game. And I don't know how many people came up to me, from our local area, obviously they're tied to Plainview, congratulations, we're behind you. But also, when I went to go see, I watched Athens High School today, and I watched Hartsville High School today, and, other places, from different parts of the state. And, you got that same, kind of that same message. So, we're growing the brand, we're growing the program. That's important to do, especially the investment that we put into it. And we hope, that we're just a really good front porch for the college. But I agree with everything you're saying. It certainly has put light on what has always been a really good school in Northeast Alabama. And now we're starting to move toward having a really good athletic department as well.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I want to again congratulate you and the softball team. Well deserved. They've earned this. None of it been given to them. So we look forward to seeing you down at Chocolaca Park. I'm going to try to do my best to try to get down there. My time is so limited, but I'm going to try to do my best to be there. Well, I'll turn it over to Howie and let you ask a couple of questions, and we'll try to get out of here.
Okay. Yeah, Coach Guthrie, we don't have much time, so I'll just make it real short and sweet. When Lump hit that home run, did you know it was out of the park then, or did you know it was good enough to score the run?
I was thinking, it went kind of, from my vantage point, it went up. Like Marty's the day before was a no doubter. It was kind of on a line going up. So I knew that one was gone. My first thought really was the sac fly piece, and that ball kind of just kept carrying, and Marty, I remember saying, on the bag. We usually have a verbal with that. And Marty just took off. And when she did it, I was a little bit irritated. And then I looked and saw where the ball was, and I'm like, yeah, she's right. It just carried that ball, like kind of in the higher, higher jet stream, more or less, for lack of a better term, carried really well on that field all weekend, not just our games, but other games on the field. So, it certainly did and I'm not taking anything away from what Fran did. I mean, she smoked that ball, but it had some carry late, as did Marty's the day before, for sure.
So once it's all celebrations done and all that, did you have words with her about leaving the bag a little bit early?
No, not at all. Other than just we talked about it, but yeah, I was just, it was really a cool moment, after to see, just the joy kind of exuded by our team, our parents, our supporters. I was kind of, honestly, from my own standpoint, just sort of taking it all in and trying to enjoy it a little bit. I actually had that thought midway through the game. Obviously you're doing you're strategizing and thinking of ways to win during the game, but I had a moment, in the middle of it where I just kind of sat back and went, this is really good softball. I mean, regardless of how this goes, it's just really well played. And that's a testament, obviously to our team, but Wallace State as well. So, worked out, but about as good a day as you could ask for sure.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt here, but it was good for you, Coach, and also for Courtney and also for Jimmy to get to celebrate a little bit, be a kid. Like it's always fun. That's the good thing about softball and baseball. It's a kid game, and so y'all kind of got to enjoy the moment also.
Yeah, and that for us personally, meaning Jimmy, myself, and Courtney, this is something we set out to do. We originally had our sights set on doing it at UAB, and we got close. Courtney and I did, and then it was a crazy kind of sequence of events. You had COVID. Jimmy ends up going to Arizona State. The rules changed 58 times while we were there, and Jimmy sent a text to us when we got done. He goes, we talked about doing this as early as 2018 when we all got together. We didn't think it was going to be here, but we got the first championship that we were looking to do. So that was pretty cool. When he sent that, and certainly that had a big reason. It was a big reason why we all reunited. 5 years later, here. We felt like there was some unfinished business there for sure.
Coach, it's that time of the show. Any shout outs you'd like to give?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, we will get started the tournament on Monday. Don't know if we're playing on Monday or Tuesday yet, but we will know that tomorrow. And, please come out, to Chocoloco Park in Oxford and, support, what may be Alabama's lone representative in the Junior College World Series this year. So we're certainly proud to do that. Excited for the opportunity, and, let's go win a national championship.
Absolutely. Coach, we appreciate this ride, letting us join you on it. Of course, it's not done yet. You got a few more games, and we're going to have you back on eventually. It's hard to say when because we don't know when you're going to play or any of that stuff yet. But of course, this is your show. We want you back on as soon as we can work it out. And best of luck next week, whenever it should be, Monday or Tuesday.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Coach, and thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. So, myself, the Howard Cheney, along with Phil Harrison, congratulations to Northeast Community College softball team and Coach Joe Guthrie for winning the ACCC Tournament this past weekend. And they got one more tournament they want to win, and I know they're looking forward to it and high expectations, and go out and support them this next week. Don't know when, but we will post it as soon as we know tomorrow night at 5:30ish.
5:30. Yeah, 5:30 is when the show begins. So hopefully shortly thereafter we'll know something.
And we'll know. And if you're in the area at Northeast, I think Phil said, Dr. Campbell said the viewing party was open to the public. So stop by Northeast there and support the team. Show them that, hey, you may not be able to go out and watch them play all the time, but you got their back and you're with them. So, but thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. So good night and God bless.